creating inclusive gaming spaces. How many people were here with us last year at AwesomeCon? Yeah! All right, and everyone else, welcome for the first time. This panel is focusing on the experiences of women in gaming, because that's our shared experience, but we definitely want to hear more about people of color in gaming and the LGBTQ community in gaming. So at the end, we're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A. We are recording our portion of the section. Everyone say hello to our wonderful AD guy, Matt. Hi, Matt. We know it's his birthday, so we want to go It's tomorrow, and if anyone want to buy me a drink tonight, so
you just give me cash.
it's really more thoughtful that way. So I am your moderator, Selvi, and I'm going to be introducing our panelists. Then I will talk a little bit about the background of the subject and try to give some context for what these wonderful ladies will be talking about. And going briefly into what we covered last year, because we definitely want to cover new grounds and want everyone to be on the same foundation. Then I have to my right, Margaret, Maggie, our notorious RPGer. She'll be covering information about marketing for the panel. Then we have Kathleen, our friendly neighborhood Minotaur reminder for a test of Labyrinth games. She'll be talking about the experiences of women in the industry. And then we have our OG mudslinger, Sylvia, who will be covering the very weighty topic of online harassment. And we also want to give a shout out to Kelsey. She is our panelist emeritus, our consoler for the lonely. She moved far, far away. Was she Texas? I know. It's weird. It's sad. Anyway, she could be here, but she's here in our place. So one of the key things I'd like to start out this panel with, boring facts. Women, defined as females, 18 or older, actually outnumber teenage boys among people who play games. Now, when I showed this, a lot of people are like, that doesn't make sense. If you've ever been on an online forum, a game store, or if you just look at the marketing of games, you would think the only people who play games were teenage boys. And the Pew Research Center did a study that I think shed some light on this. Regardless of gender, about half of people play games. But only about 15% of men and 5% of women actually identify as gamers. And that's a missed opportunity. There's a lot of people who love our hobby, and they don't feel included in our community. Well, why should we care? A bunch of filthy casuals, right? We all dabble in some games. None of us is 100% dedicated to 100% of the games we play, so we're all filthy casuals. Okay. And we really need that. Casuals subsidize the industry. If we still want to have our awesome games year after year, we're going to have to welcome more people into our hobby. And at the same time, if we want to have new and interesting games year after year, then we need a more diverse fan base, interesting people coming in to create games for us, to give feedback and critique about games, or blogging and writing. So we all love first-person shooters, for example, but we don't want to play the same first-person shooter for the rest of our lives. And in that way, diversity in gaming is something that affects us all. So last year we tackled a couple of key issues that were facing the gaming community. Online harassment, and yet in this panel without at least mentioning Gamergate. And we came up with a solution that is having good moderation. So if you are a participant in an online forum or an online game, if there's an anti-harassment policy, help the moderators enforce it. If there isn't an anti-harassment policy, help the moderators create one. And there's some good resources that Sylvia will actually share about that. We also talked last year about how design and marketing can really miss the mark for a lot of gamers. And a good way of sending feedback to the industry, we talked about social media campaigns, grassroots efforts, and actually I think Kathleen kind of has a new slide that we added on that kind of gives an example of how the industry will actually respond to, some of these outcries. And finally, we talked a little bit about how to deal with the fact that sometimes we're not welcome in physical gaming stores. And one of the best ways to address that is voting with your wallet. If you are not welcome in a store, do not give them your money. Go somewhere else that you do feel included and welcome and give them your money. And I'm not speaking of Amazon.com here. Support our regulatory. We are also trying to keep an active presence on Facebook. So if you are still a lady like me and are on Facebook still instead of Instagram or Twitter or whatever else, you can follow us here, and we will continue to share updates and hopefully do more events as the years go on. So now I'm going to turn things over to Maggie to talk a little bit about marketing.
I have index cards, but I gave up numbering them after. I did prepare this so I'm here to talk to you about marketing. And we wanted to focus on the changes and trends that we noticed moving from last year's presentation to this year's presentation. The big takeaway that I found was that the industry is responding to, especially to women, as we saw, 50%. They are now marketing towards us because they see that we have money to spend it. They're also responding to some rapid change in the gaming industry as a whole. This is mostly due to the rise of mobile gaming. The global gaming market is this year going to clear approximately $99.6 billion, and it has increased in size 8% in the last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you think about how much money that represents, it's huge. So let's talk a little bit about mobile games, because that's one of the big changes. Generally, I just want to point out that mobile gaming revenue will overtake console and PC gaming revenue for the first time this year. It's a huge change. Another big change is the growth of the Asian market. 55% of all mobile gaming revenue this year will come from Asia, mostly Japan. But India is actually the fastest growing market for mobile gaming. Also Brazil, randomly. I don't know why. But yeah.
I know lots of Brazilians that come up from Brazil, yeah.
Hey, cool. Right, and also videos. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about marketing and mobile games, because they tend to be marketed a little differently than your PC console games, as you probably noticed. Things like social media, word of mouth, websites, forums, they always encourage you to rank and rate them because that's how they get up and more visible. Offering free previews, which we all get addicted to, and then find out we have to pay $2.99, and then are and this is just a screen grab from Google Play, which showed the top mobile games that they had. And you can see that it's just small, bright, colorful, grab your eye. It's not really overly sexualized or anything like that because it's, Candy Crush. I guess you could, but I don't want to see that. Don't. Or if you do, don't. So moving forward, mobile gaming is also taking advantage of, and gaming in general actually, is taking advantage of a lot of other changes, things like the advent of virtual reality, subscription services for gaming like Amazon offers, and of course the delivery gaming services like Steam are basically how I think a lot of people find those games now. So the point I just made was that mobile games kind of move away from the traditional marketing. But that's not always true. Next slide, please. Hit it. All right, so over the Super Bowl, Game of War aired a commercial showing the uptick. I believe she was portraying Athena, and it basically opens with her boobs floating in water, which, okay, fine.
I think it was milk. Is it milk? Is it milk?
It's supposed to be milk.
Anyway, the point is, after this commercial aired, Game of War pulls in over $1 million a day. It's been viewed over 7 million times on YouTube, and because of the commercial, Machine Zone, which is the company that puts out Game of War, the game is now the #2 top grossing mobile game, and it's number 38 on the top free-to-play list. So while mobile games have typically moved away from traditional marketing when they take advantage of it and include boobs, the results But all is not lost. In fact, there were really promising strides, I think, in marketing this year. If you look, we're going to see some examples and pictures at some of the marketing campaigns of some of the best-selling PC and console games from last year. And I think you're going to see some really cool images. First is from the number 4 best-selling game of last year, which was Star Wars Battlefront. We couldn't include full commercials in this because we didn't want to get in any trouble. But if you've seen the commercial, it features everyday people being kind of taken out of their normal lives and plopped into battle cop and things like that. And it opens with a girl in a comic book shop. And this is from the print media campaign. It's her purple hair and her earring. And the next one is the Siege of Dragon Spear, which featured a trans character, which made a lot of publicity and a lot of controversy. I don't think it was controversial about it, what air quotes. But I pulled this image mostly so you could see the portrayal of the female fighter/warrior on the front, because she's actually fully clothed. I mean, when I go to fight my dragon, Kathleen, I wear my chainmail bikini. Because that's safe.
Personal choice.
Yeah. But this woman is chosen to be fully clothed. But this is, to me, this is a radical change in marketing of these style, those sword and sorcery style of games. Usually it was just hanging out and as much skin as possible. So the next one. So Tom Clancy's The Division, also a very high-selling game. It does, I believe it features a woman on the right. It's hard to tell because everybody kind of looks the same. Again, it's not really sexualized. And the most surprising thing to me, I walked into a GameStop in the mall to check out what was there, and I saw the cover of the new Lara Croft Tomb Raider. That's Lara Croft now. That's pretty amazing, right? I mean, if you look at images from the rest of the game, yes, sometimes she's still in her tank top and shorts. She's also in the desert, so I'm not gonna.
It's hot.
Yeah.
Like physically, it's warm.
Yeah.
It's stuff.
And her proportions seem realistic, which is nice. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to talk about my actual favorite ad campaign of this past year. And it's for the number 1 best-selling game of last year, which was Call of Duty Black Ops 3. It features the slogan, "There's a soldier in all of us." And the commercials were amazing. Again, they showed normal people participating in the game, but as themselves. So this is a view from the previous one, and as we go through here, you'll just see these were the people that were featured in the commercial. They don't really look like the people we're used to seeing as portrayed as like video games. Yeah, the girl in the top right, I'm like, that's me. When I was a kid. David knows because he knew me. The bottom right is still kind of problematic, right? I just want to point out that this was from the Carl's Jr. affiliated ad. So the woman that's featured in this is again highly sexualized. But overall, when I saw this commercial, we have kids here? I guess I shouldn't say that word. I went crazy. I was so excited. I immediately looked it up on YouTube. It also featured the Rolling Stones song Peanut Black. So I watched it over and over. I was so impressed, and I knew it was going to be a part of this presentation because I thought it was a huge radical change.
You went crazy?
I did. So the big point is that video game makers are finally catching on to who plays the games. I was really proud of that. I emailed everyone on this panel and said, so that's marketing. So moving in.
All right, thank you very much. And now we're going to turn things over to Kathleen to talk about analog tabletop gaming.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. I guess my side is, I know nothing about video games, so all of that other stuff that we just saw, I have absolutely no clue about. But I do know a little bit about tabletop gaming. And I think that all of us understand that historically, tabletop gaming has suffered from a lot of the same problems that online gaming and video gaming culture has suffered from. We've all, I believe, in some way have experienced at least something or historically have heard of either game stores or competitive tournament gaming scenes that have been non-inclusive. And I think what I wanted to just talk a little bit about is what I have seen over the last year since our last panel. And this was a cute cartoon that I just found the other day. But I think my basic opinion of what I have seen in the last year, kind of like what Maggie said, was I have seen some tremendous strides in the right direction. Not that there's not still problems, but I do see a lot of good things happening in the industry. And I think there's still a lot that we need to do. But one of the things when I was thinking about what I was going to say at this presentation, I just kind of wandered around the store. Oh, and by the way, I own Labyrinth Games and Puzzles on Capitol Hill. So I was wandering around the store thinking, you know, how do I feel about women in gaming nowadays, and how do I feel about people of color or the LGBTQ community in gaming? And what I did was I started looking around, and I started looking at boxes of some of the new games that have come out. And I actually, one of the things that really struck me was how women are being presented in historically male-dominated industries. For example, Quadropolis just came out not too long ago. It is Days of Wonder's Game of the Year. This year, that Days of Wonder produces just one board game every year generally, and Quadropolis is what it is. And it's actually a really fun city-building game. But there are just as many female architects in the game as there are male architects in the game. And I really love that. Like, you don't get a choice of playing the woman or the man. It's all mixed together. You play 4 different tokens every time, 2 of which are women, 2 of which are men. And I really enjoyed that. Pandemic, of course, is one of the best-selling games of all time, and Pandemic Legacy this year came out and skyrocketed to the top of the board game list of best games. But one of the great things was when Pandemic got redone, the actual main character on the cover of the thing is a woman scientist, completely fully clothed, but actually doing science. And I think that's really great. Stockpile is a brand new stock market game. Traditionally, you know, when you think about Wall Street and everything, you think about the young white guys, stock market people, but there are just as many women, albeit they didn't tend to still be all white. But there are women on the cover of a stock market game, which I thought was pretty incredible. And then I started thinking about other games, other collectible card games and living card games. And I thought back to Fantasy Flight and, of course, Wizards of the Coast, which I'm going to talk about next. But one of the biggest games that we sell in our store is Netrunner. Netrunner is by, the same guy who designed Magic. And it got a relaunch several years ago. But what I think is amazing is the community is still mostly male, although we do have a lot of women that come in the store and play tournament, and also there are a lot of women that play in their homes Netrunner, but the game features women predominantly, and in the base set of Netrunner, there is not a single white guy. Every single character that is in the base game, there are some in the expansions and stuff, but in the base game, every single character in the base game is of mixed race. And there are lots of women. Kate McCaffrey is one of the most well-known runners ever, and she is a mix of African American and Irish. Most of the characters, many of the characters, I'm not going to say most, but many of the characters are mixed race. And I started reading up on Netrunner and why they did that, and it's a near future game. They say it's not far off in the distant future where, things, but it's something, we're all long dead, but it's, they're expecting the future that we won't have discrimination against women, we won't have discrimination against mixed race, or we won't question whether one race can be with another race or anything like that. And that's what the game designers wanted to portray in the game. You, of course, then do look at who's playing the game, and it tends to still be mostly male.
I appreciate diversity in games.
I think it's pretty amazing. I think, though, that Fantasy Flight, although they kind of give lip service, a lot of lip service to that, is that they specifically don't give out money prizes in their tournament play to lessen the nastiness that has been prevalent in Magic the Gathering tournaments at some point. But I still haven't seen as much from Fantasy Flight of them coming out hardcore and saying, we are now an inclusive environment and we are going to run our tournaments that way, and that, as we have lately from Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast in the last 2 years has come out hard and they've come out strong for trying to stand up for inclusivity, and I've been really impressed with it. There are still lots of problems. I am not saying that there aren't, but there still are. I think a couple things that I wanted to just mention is, Fate Reforged and Dragons of Tarkir came out a couple years ago, but Fate Reforged included the first trans character ever displayed on a Magic the Gathering card, Alicia, who smiles at death. And then Narset, I thought this was really cool. Narset, which came out in Dragons of Tarkir, is actually neuroatypical. And I read an article one time when it first came out about a gentleman who suffered or was on the autism spectrum and actually wrote to one of the game designers and said, I've read the backstory of Narset, and she sounds a lot like me. She sounds a lot like when I was a kid. Could she possibly be autistic? And that would be amazing, because to have someone represent the type of person I am in the game that I love would just be incredible. And the game designer wrote back and said, well, yes, we did write her as a neuroatypical character. In her world, she doesn't necessarily have autism to speak about, but that is kind of what we based it on, which I thought was really interesting. The other thing that I found really interesting about what Wizards of the Coast has been doing lately is both to game store owners and in conventions and various things, they're giving a lot of feedback. Labyrinth has been featured several times on their website as being an inclusive environment, but they're including other stories of other stores all over the country that are doing more inclusive activities. They have also
find your friend at local game store, apparently. The Wizards
Yeah, it's been amazing that the articles that they've been doing, and they've really been doing a lot of things to help local game stores and tell local game stores how can you make things more welcoming to all types of people. They've also really started pushing groups like Planeswalkers for Diversity and the Lady Planeswalker Society, which have come up to kind of fight for more inclusivity within the Magic community. They also, Elaine Bergeau has been, who is a female woman, and I believe I don't know where she's from, but where she's from France. She has been director of organized play and is now director of global organized play for almost 5 years. She came to the store once. She's really nice. And then just recently, a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, they have recently put out a documentary called Enter the Battlefield, which when I saw it, I kind of inwardly groaned. I'm like, oh man, it's going to look at the Pro Tour and it's all going to be white guys and it's going to be horrible. And so I watched it because I'm trying this year, my New Year's resolution was to learn more about Magic the Gathering. I watched it and I looked at the Pro Tour, and I was thrilled to see that one of the people that they featured was Melissa DeTora, who was the first woman ever to top 10 in a Pro Tour for Magic the Gathering. So she is one of 6 people that are actually followed through the documentary, and it's really cool. It's on Netflix if anybody wants to see it. It's really interesting. And then even better, just recently we had a Grand Prix in DC, and there was a woman who went to the Grand Prix in DC. It was here in the Convention Center. Or was it Pro Tour or Grand Prix?
Which one?
The one here in DC.
It was previously the Grand Prix was most recent.
Yeah. But there was actually a person from Forbes who wrote an entire article for Forbes all about Magic the Gathering and the fact that diversity is now one of their marketing strategies. And what she did a lot was she interviewed a lot of the female teams that were playing here in DC at the tournament. And then just a couple weeks ago, there was Grand Prix in Charlotte. No, that's okay. There was a Grand Prix in Charlotte, and I had several friends and actually a staff person who went to play in it, and all of them texted me this picture of they actually had posted all over the Grand Prix things saying in Charlotte, North Carolina, they had things saying that this is an inclusive environment. They set up neutral gender bathrooms. Unfortunately, it couldn't be right in the thing, but they really fought. And Star City Games has said next year they're not going to North Carolina because of the bathroom bill. But I thought it was great to see that they had things that consideration and inclusivity was key. I really enjoyed that. I have also seen just in the industry some pretty significant changes among game store owners. I belong to a Facebook group that's only game store retailers, And since then, we have actually had a female game store owner group start. And when I said that I was going to be in this panel, everyone, I thought one part was really interesting. There are lots of female game store owners. But I did post out, I'm like, do you still feel like you face harassment or sexism in the industry? And every single one of them said yes, which was a little bit worrying to me. But they all also said that they thought it was getting better. They all also said, for the most part, about 80% of them said that they felt that they had more sexism or, derogatory statements from customers than they did other people in the industry, which I thought was really interesting. Several of them told me stories about how, they've owned their stores for years and years and years. I've owned Labyrinth for almost 6 years, but some of them have been in this industry for way longer than I have. And they said they still frequently have people come in, and if they need to buy or sell a magic card, or if they have a question about a game, they'll go to the male employee who's been there for 2 months and won't talk to them because they don't think they know anything about games. Which is kind of sad, but I think it's still great that we see that females are taking a bigger role. For example, there is now a female retailer who's been in the industry for a really long time on the Game Manufacturers Association, which is really nice, and she's been pushing a lot, especially when some of the old-timey game store owners say some of the stuff that makes me mad. But she'll jump right in and say, hey, that's not right, your promotion of everybody going out and getting strippers at the Vegas Con is not really a really cool thing to do on this, inclusive website.
I just want to share my personal visual when you said old-timey game store owners, guys with monocles.
Where there's a rigid.
They actually, they do the Gamma convention every year. It's all for game industry people and game store retailers and game industry manufacturer people. It's in Vegas every year, and there seriously was one guy who posted on the game store group, hey, we're all going to go out and get hookers and strippers. Hey, come on, and I'm like, oh my god, whatever. But yes, and the big news is Gen Con this year is, for the first time ever, the Industry Insider panel is a majority female, which it's the first time it's ever happened. It's been incredible. But, next slide please.
So, real quick, for anyone who doesn't know what Gen Con is.
Does anybody not know what Gen Con is? Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Gen Con.
Industry jargon.
I'm sorry. That was not very pleasant of me. I'm so sorry. Gen Con is it's the largest gaming convention in the United States, board gaming mostly, a lot of role-playing games, but it's in Indianapolis. Yes, Indianapolis. Each year in August, it actually competes with my used game sale this year, which really stinks, but it is a huge, huge gaming convention, tens of thousands of people, bigger than AwesomeCon. But it's a huge thing, and every year they have this panel where they discuss kind of the state of the industry, and it's called the Industry Insiders. And over the years, more women have been represented in the panel, but this is the first year ever that it's been a majority.
And you can imagine how happy the internet is about that.
Yes, which is what I was going to go to next. Unfortunately, this has created an enormous storm of backlash, just huge. Luckily, this one only has 2 likes, but basically the internet exploded when this came out, when some reports came out that how dare them, they are just doing that, to show that they're inclusive, but they're not really, and all these people don't know what they're talking about. So it's really created a lot of controversy, and that's still kind of sad. So we are seeing a lot of that. And I think we'll get to my next slide, which is there's still even more problems. Here it is. So although there are women being now presented in, predominantly male roles earlier that were fully dressed, there are still a lot of games out there that aren't necessarily buying into that. And what I see, at least in my role as buyer for Labyrinth, is most of them are using the excuse that they're anime, and that, that's just how culture is in Japan, which I find kind of a weak reason for doing it. A couple of these are Tanto Kore, which is really just...
And they're American-made,
not necessarily. Yeah, all of these are American-made games. So, well, Force of Will may be actually from Japan, and then it came over here, but now it's being published in the United States.
It feels like they're saying, you can't call me sexist, you're being racist.
And it happens all the time. That's kind of what, that's a lot of what they say. But I'm happy to say we do not carry any of these games at Labyrinth, and I'm not going to. I'm just not going to. Force of Will, though, has heard that a little bit. I'm still not carrying it in the store. It is amazing. In my female retailer game Facebook group, Force of Will comes up about every week, because every week they put out this new card, and we're like, can it get any worse? And then it does. Force of Will just recently, like there are lots of stores that have stopped carrying it just because of the graphic images that are on some of the cards and some of the things that they've done. But just this week, they came out and said, hey, look, we're changing this promo, and we're covering her very, very naked rear end with this light, flighty skirt, which I actually like this skirt a lot. But, and I really love the hat. I love the hat. You can't physically stand like that, and I'm very worried about her popping out of the top because, I mean, she's running from dragons. I guess, you know, whatever she wants to do. But I think that this was really interesting. Like, Force of Wheels specifically did this because of the feedback that they got about the art, which I think is kind of good. On the other hand, the internet yet again exploded. Force of Will players are furious about this. There was just, and God knows, I read the comments for y'all. It was really, really bad. It was horrible. But a lot of them feel very, very specifically that their way of life is being targeted if we put a skirt on someone. I don't exactly know what that is, but I mean, but they're very upset that the company that publishes Force of Will has succumbed to what they call
social justice warrior agenda.
But I found it interesting. I don't know if a skirt will fix the problems that this game has. I mean, there's a lot of even mechanical issues that this game has, which is really probably at least half of why I don't carry it, because it's just not a really great game. I think that in closing, we've seen a lot of great strides this year, and I think that that's great. I think that when you think about game stores and talking a little bit about Labyrinth, I've been there for 6.5 years. I also posted out in the general Facebook group, and I said, hey, do all of you that own stores, there's about, I don't know, almost 200 game store owners on this Facebook group. I said, do you do anything very specifically to make women, people of color, gay, lesbian, trans, do you do something specific to do it? And a lot of people said yes. They said, you know, we hold game nights for women, we hold game nights for gamers, we hold we do. There were a lot of people that said yes, they did specific things to try and make individuals in those groups feel comfortable. A lot of people came out, and I don't know how I feel about either side of these arguments, but a lot of people came out and said, you know what, we treat people like humans. Every single person that walks in this store, we must treat like humans, but they don't necessarily go out of their way to announce that they're an inclusive environment. My take on it, and something that I want to do even more in the future, and we used to do it a lot more when we first opened up, is every event that we have before we start generally, we say that it's an inclusive environment. We say that our rules are play nice. You must play nice in my store, or you do not play in my store. I have no problem kicking people out.
Mama bear.
Yeah, I mean, it's not worth it to me to have anybody be nasty to anybody else. That's not why we do this. Why I do this is to bring people together, all different people, and make them come together and enjoy life face-to-face, playing a game that they love. Yes. And speaking of which, the last thing that I want to selfishly, or like shamelessly plug, I don't know, I'm plugging it, I'm really sorry.
Plugging it, she's running it, and you're captive audience.
Labyrinth Games is running AwesomeCon this year, so if you like cons, because you're here, and you like board games, come to AwesomeCon. We're still selling tickets. It is going to be a completely tabletop gaming convention. We are never going to stray for that as long as I'm doing it. I am 1/3 of the part of people that are doing it. And we have tons of great volunteers helping us and things like that. But it's going to be
awesome. You really don't want to miss it.
Well, we'll be there. Yes.
But it's at the Georgetown University Hotel and Convention Center, and you can get all the details at WashingtonCon.com.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Now we're going to turn things over to Sylvia to talk about online communities. Kind of the, like I said,
The dark side.
the dark, hang on to your butts.
I think we did it down for a bit. But then we go back to what we changed. So this 2014 Pew study shows that 40% had experienced of internet users have experienced online harassment. Young women experience it more frequently, and they experience more severe harassment more often, which is shocking. Unfortunately, as we all know, online harassment is not limited to that. Over the past couple of years, many prominent women, including Amy Sarkeesian and Bazilon, Ashley Judd, have spoken about being harassed online. And last month, I think, President Obama specifically spoke about the need to address the problem. And he specifically mentioned the online harassment of female gamers, bloggers, and sportscasters.
Thanks, Obama.
A bunch of problems. And the gaming community, unfortunately, is not perceived as being very well. Look at that slide over there. We are 30 points below what internet discussions are. It's like, what, you know, when you're doing like what, 30 points worse than Reddit? That's like the worst thing. But I mean, the point is not just that the sites are seen as not welcoming towards women. They're not seen as welcoming towards anyone. Here, it's only 50% of them think that they're equally welcoming men and women. And I mean, as we know, there have been other sort of instances of harassment in the world of online dating. Like this year's South by Southwest, where 2 scheduled panels on gaming and online harassment were canceled after threats of violence. They, after a widespread negative response, they were reinstated as part of a day-long symposium. And there was also the online pushback that Kathleen mentioned about Gen Con. And even some of the newest online communities are not immune to this. I've seen a bunch of articles about a new virtual reality community called Altspace, and a lot of people are talking about the online harassment of women in that. One author with a female avatar was harassed literally not even 2 minutes after she first got in. So, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, but as everyone here has noted, though there are problems, things are getting better. As more attention is starting to get paid to online harassment, more resources are springing up to fight. On the legislative front, actually, there have been several bills introduced last year and this year. There's H.R. 4057, the Interstate Swatting Folks Act, which was introduced by Massachusetts Representative Kathleen Clark. She was immediately swatted. And
Of course.
she also signed on to H.R. 2031, which was introduced by New York Representative Elliot Engel, which would require a person convicted of swatting to reimburse the responding agencies. In the Senate, that's going to happen.
That just makes dollars and cents.
And on the Senate side, Senator Chuck Schumer introduced S1718, the SWAT Act, which expands penalties for fake 911 calls. None of these bills have made it past committee yet, but they're there and they're progress. Yes? Great. Sorry. So swatting is a form of online harassment it's a form of harassment that often begins online, where people post people's identifying information, address, and phone numbers, and people start calling 911 or the fire department or other emergency services and claiming that there's an emergency. A couple of years ago, a member of the Lizard Squad was convicted of several counts of that, along with other counts of online harassment. So it's not necessarily online harassment, but it often starts online.
And to clarify another term that you might be using, when someone posts the information, that's doxing.
Yes.
Right? So doxing is when you post the information, swatting is when you call up emergency services in that area and you're like, oh my God, that's an active shooter. Which is a D move in many, many, many respects, okay?
What does D mean?
You just said.
Peaches. PG-13.
Whatever, it's a line.
You know what I mean.
Also, while it is nice that more attention is being paid to this, there are also well-meaning but flawed bills to watch out for. Like Utah recently had one of those. The legislator put forward HB 255, which was a proposed anti-doxing, thank you for that information, law. And it was justly criticized for being too general and was eventually withdrawn, but it highlights the problem when you have legislators who are trying to do good but don't necessarily know how the internet works. And they don't know, you can't criminalize, I think this is also our quote, people posting personally identifiable information online. That's a little too broad.
Like, it was Selvi, like, hey, here's my address, so when you can come over later, and then I get requested for school.
All right, next slide.
Whatever, she has a program in her GPS already.
But so there are also a lot of more general resources. The International Game Developers Association has an online harassment page that is a very good and very comprehensive resource. It covers what to do when you're being harassed and also what employers and allies can do to help. Crash Over White Network is a helpline and resource center for the targets of online harassment. For your newbies, A Smart Girl's Guide to Online Privacy is a good resource. It covers topics such as website and browser privacy controls, online dating sites, and people finder websites that some people might not want to think about, but these are ways that your information can be taken and used maliciously. Also, Danielle Keats-Citron, I think she's a professor here at one of the University of Maryland. Her book, Hate Crimes in Cyberspace, is a very good legal and historical resource. It situates the problem of online harassment of women within the historical context of workplace sexual harassment and domestic violence. It also discusses how existing laws and reforms to existing laws might apply to some specific cases. She also argues that legal precedents in both criminal and civil rights law, as well as social norms, should be leveraged to stop it. Also, next slide, please. I'm also going to talk briefly about how some organizations have been studying their online communities and working on making them healthier. Riot Games, the makers of League of Legends, collects a huge amount of data on how their players play. They also run experiments and publish their results. And as you can see, some of the findings are interesting. It is apparently not always enough to just provide a guide towards good behavior. The way the cues are presented is important. As you can see here, the color of the text is important. In another tooltip, when the positive question, who will be the most sportsmanlike, was presented in red, that actually led to an increase in negative behavior. Riot also found that only 1% of their player base was toxic, which they define as frequently acting badly. But interestingly enough, only 5% of what they call toxic behavior came from this 1% of toxic players. 77% of it came from the players who were usually good. So, according to them, a lot of the bad behavior in their community comes from people who are normally not abusive or just having a bad day, just decided it's okay to do whatever I want. I don't know. But it's an interesting thing. And
It gives me a little more hope to say that a lot of this negative environment is not the result of organized or malicious individuals, but just like people having bad days, and we can all just be a little better. Maybe things will get better.
There's also the UK newspaper The Guardian. They commissioned the research into the 70 million comments left on their website since 2006. It's actually like just Google Guardian comment survey, and you'll find it's a really good, really detailed article worth reading. Especially if you're thinking about moderation in your communities and how to make them better. They did find that of the 10 most abused writers on their staff, 8 of them were women and the 2 men were black. They did note that while they were focused on gender partially to test the theory that women experience more online abuse than men, both the writers and the moderators observed that ethnic and religious minorities and LGBT people also appear to experience a disproportionate amount of abuse.
Shocker.
Despite this, though, and people who are all like, never read the comments, they are not giving up. They said that while they've increased the number of stories that they close to comments, they do not plan to close comments altogether. For the most part, Guardian readers enrich the journalism. Only 2% of comments are blocked. A further 2% are deleted because they are spam or replies to blocked comments. The majority are respectful and many are wonderful. A good British read.
They're British.
But these British people are pretty hard. They say a good comment thread is a joy to read, and more common when they don't read the comments detractors quickly. So this is a summary of some of the things we talked about in creating healthy online communities last year. And I discussed this in more detail last year, so this is mostly for reference. Please feel free to come by and ask me about details later. I will close by saying that, finding your niche online is very important, as much as you know. Look offline too. Look at local resources like I found Labyrinth. I never thought I would play face to face again, and it's been fantastic. Maggie, did you go visit Social Justice and Gaming?
Yes, DC has a new social justice and gaming group that I think they organized an event which was really great, and now they're taking a little time off to maybe link up international, and they're further modify. But they have a Facebook page. I encourage you to look for it. And I know there's some Geeks Out DC people here. Definitely find David Blue, 1331.
1331. 1331.
Go by and say hi, and also look for them on Facebook. They're
Get this shirt, y'all.
And here's from gaming.
Oh yeah! So are you guys going to be having more events here? Like, what's going on with that? I saw that you had posted on the page.
I know,
on the spot.
So yes, we are looking to expand the team right now. We have a lot of amazing content. We're looking to build communities to start working on that content, deliver to the masses, and start building a community.
Okay, so anyone who couldn't hear, he's saying that they're focusing on building up content and then getting it published, and then working on building up the community from there. Is that a good summary? Which is awesome.
And I want to say really quickly, because I know we want time for questions. I was super impressed that I was actually the only girl at that meeting. It was all guys on their own putting this together to increase awareness and diversity.
Intersectionality.
Finally, while we've talked about problems with online harassment and hostile behavior, we also know that fawning is not the solution. And really what we want is for everyone to play the way that, Kathleen has been playing in her store. Nice. That's right.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, competitive does not necessarily preclude niceness. You can be competitive.
Like, I will crush you. But you're going to
All right, so thank you very much, Sylvia, and thank you again to all my wonderful panelists.